we're going to talk a little bit about our 10-hour brew day. And we only have about 6 or 7 minutes to talk about our 10-hour brew days. We're going to have to try to make it brief. There was a lot of repetition.
Yes.
We can discuss 3 or 4 hours of our brew day in about 30 seconds by saying that we decocted again and again and again and again and again.
So we had about 12 decoctions by the end of it.
Yeah, somewhere in the neighborhood of 12 decoctions. I almost said what it boiled down to.
Whoa!
That's really bad. All right. What our problems...
There it is.
Where our problems began were bad thermometers, and I think this is a really good time to talk about making sure that you've got proper equipment when you're brewing, because we had a thermometer that was giving us a low reading, a high reading.
High reading. And
so we thought we had to pour a bunch of cold water into our mash tun to kill some of the temperature.
And really, it was just fluctuating. We had been using an electric read, and I know that they go bad eventually. And we had seen some deviation in it, like basically like a meat thermometer. So you run the cable in there. Most people have to cover those, do something to get the water out of there, because once the water starts getting in past the O-ring, then they're pretty much worthless. Well, it had gotten to that point. It was great before that, but it had gotten to that point now where that was not reading accurately.
So we had one thermometer that was measuring, 7 to 10 degrees high, and we had another thermometer that was measuring 7 to 10 degrees low.
Right.
So when we figured out that this thermometer was wrong, we put the other thermometer in, and we're like, whoa.
Now we're way low.
Yeah, we're way low. So we started doing multiple decoctions to try to bring our temperature up.
Right.
At one point, we thought we had gone too hot and killed all of our grains, so we just started randomly grinding grain into the mash tun.
We decided we weren't going to eliminate the ability for us to...
we were not giving up on this barley wine.
We never say die. Way to go, guys.
This was going to happen.
We could have made a 1060 or 1070 beer, but we weren't going to cut it at that. We wanted a 1010.
We wanted barley wine.
So we found a bunch more caramel, and we had a bunch more pale left, so we ground the crap out of about 8 or 10 more pounds of grain and basically restarted the mash. We were on the low end for what we needed. We only mashed about...
Well, we hit it.
We only mashed about 19 or 20 pounds, which for what we were trying to do, we easily could have mashed 30. And we probably did by the end of the day.
Probably.
So we added and we just kept decocting. The whole time we were doing it, we would take out another gallon, and basically decocting is you take some of the mash and you boil it and put it back in, and it warms the whole tank. So we just kept doing that. We probably did that 10, 15 times.
I think we should have another episode on decoction mash, because that's a really neat topic.
It's fun, yeah.
Let's talk about again sometime here in the next few months. But after we got the mash done, everything was smooth sailing after the mash. The boil went beautifully.
Everything went fine.
3-hour boil. We hit within a few thousandths of our desired gravity. So, I mean, we did it fairly well. And then we put it in the fermenter, as you are wont to do. And we dropped it into our little fermenting refrigerator. And then Kyle went to check it a little later. What did you find out there, Kyle?
About 2 hours later, because we already put it on an elevated yeast cake. We had a yeast cake from a carboy that had made a bitter the weekend before. And so we took that, made the beer, and it was fermenting quite heavily within 2 hours. So we were getting a bubble.
I saw a bubble come out of there within 10 minutes of dropping in the fermenter. I mean, that yeast was hungry.
It was ready to go.
Pictures?
Yes.
Yes, definitely.
So then we hit, and we went ahead and said, okay, well, I'll give it a few hours. And within about 6 hours, we went ahead and added a blow-off tube, because by then, within 6 hours of the brew, it was already blowing out off through the airlock, which you can see the airlock on the top of that orange blow-off apparatus.
And then the blow-off tube itself is going off to the left of the picture, of this particular picture. You can see the blow-off tube itself. And the purpose of this is to allow that foam and that rosin somewhere to go other than blowing off your airlock. And
you can see that airlock is already full, because
it already has.
By the time that airlock, or by the time the bubble off, and you can see all the CO2 bubbling out of there, through that hose, the CO2 is going into a bucket of sanitized liquid, and it's just blowing off carbonation. And that was blowing off. Wait, you wrote this down. It was going blah 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 through a 3/8" hose. It was going about a bubble off of about 7 times a second. It was going crazy within 6 hours.
That's about what I was guessing too. I mean, it was really moving out of there.
This agitation, frustration, the memorization of the things I'm gonna do to you.